All right, so we're going to go on to notes number 8 today, talking about characteristics of vascular plants in particular. Yesterday we got the whole overview with the plants chart. Today we're going to be talking a little bit more specifically about vascular plants. We will get into, I think, a few more details about angiosperms and gymnosperms, but today is just a general overview of vascular plants. If you're doing the handwritten notes, here's how you're going to set it up. You want your name at the top, as always. This is going to be notes number 8. Characteristics of vascular plants is your title. You're going to want to have your divider line here with general topic on the left and details or facts on the right. And yes, I did forget to take the picture before I started writing, so that's why you see this little, well, you don't see it, right? Right. Anyways, moving on. So just as a reminder, hopefully you already did the review questions before you got to this. So the plant kingdom is divided into two separate categories, or two separate subphyla. We have the vascular and the non-vascular groups. Remember that word I told you to remember for vascular is veins. So these are the plants that do have veins or tube-like structures to transport water and nutrients and other things the plant needs from the top of the plant down to the roots and even the stem and other systems. From vascular, we further divide into those that reproduce using seeds and those that do not. That's the seedless group. Seedless doesn't really divide any further than that. You get ferns, whisk ferns, horsetails, and then club mosses are all examples of seedless vascular. Then those that do produce seeds get a little bit more particular, is that what I'm trying to say? Probably. So, the two groups of seed-producing plants are angiosperms, which are those that reproduce using flowers. I don't know why my flowers keep looking like four-leaf clovers. And those that produce their seeds uncovered or inside of a cone or a hard berry. So generally I draw some resemblance of a pine cone there. Examples of gymnosperms include conifers, cycads, ginkgos, and netophytes. And then angiosperms actually divide further into monocots and dicots, which we know stands for either one cotyledon or two cotyledons, which we know is the baby seed leaf that first sprouts when the seed begins to germinate. A monocot will sprout one leaf at a time, while a dicot will sprout, yikes, the drawings are getting bad here, two. And then the non-vascular plants, before I forget those, are those plants that do not have tubes or veins to transport water. They are called the bryophytes, and then there's really no further subdivisions from there, just their three main examples: mosses, liverworts, and hornworts. So, like I said, today we're talking about just the vascular plants in particular. So, vascular plants have what we call roots, stems, and leaves, all things that you've heard of before. But it is important to know that these parts are all different examples of organs of a plant, which sounds kind of weird because normally we think of organs as, our brain, our skin, our stomach, things inside of our own human body. But truly, the definition of an organ is just multiple tissues working together. So, since leaves, stems, and roots, since all of them are made of different tissues that are working together to do a specific job, they're so classified as organs. So, if you think about it, the roots, okay, this organ's job is to absorb water and minerals from the ground, as well as firmly anchor the plant into the ground and keep it from moving or swaying or being ripped up. The stem, this organ, its job is to transport water and nutrients from the tops of the plants to the bottom. The leaves, this organ's main job is to collect the sunlight, and this is where most of the photosynthesis will take place. So their job is to make the food. The stems kind of transport the food, and the roots help gather minerals for the food to be made, as well as water. So these are all called organs because they are made of many tissues, and each one has a special job to perform. Examples of vascular plants are honestly probably anything that you're going to think of right off the bat. Any kind of flower, tree, and even ferns. If you're doing the handwritten notes, our first general topic is what are they? Okay, just kind of giving a brief overview of what vascular plants are, just as a reminder. Vascular plants have roots, stems, and leaves. That's what we have written up here. They are different parts. Oh no, these are different parts called organs because they are made of many tissues and each one has a special job to perform. So, the different organs, what are they for and what are they like? The roots part of the plant, okay? This is the part of the plant that lives below the soil. Obviously, you can probably tell me that already. And this is called the root system, okay? Typically, it's more than one root, and it is absolutely vital or necessary for the plant to survive. Even if you're trying to pull weeds or kill a plant or anything like that, if you don't pull it up by the root, generally it's going to come back and make a revival. So the root is really kind of like the heart of the plant. You got that is where all of the essential nutrients and life of the plant is kept. These roots also help to firmly anchor the plant into the soil. It's not easily swayed or moved around. And the roots also provide water and minerals needed for making the food, which we know would be the glucose, okay? Provides the H2O part of that photosynthesis equation. So the roots are obviously extremely essential, but what's cool about the roots is roots are actually way more powerful than you think. Oftentimes, when a plant is growing roots, such as this massive tree you see up here in the picture, sometimes those roots can grow so strongly that they actually can break through lots of things. They've even been known to break through cement, to grow through and into little cracks and holes of wood and eventually split those apart, rocks even, okay? So the roots are actually incredibly powerful. Now, they can't do that all at one time. Obviously, it takes time for them to be able to do that, but they also tend to grow in the direction of wherever the water source is. So for example, if a tree is planted near a lake or a river or a pond, the roots will probably grow towards that water. At least I would think so. Okay, for handwritten notes, the next topic is the root system. This is the part of the plant that lives below the soil. It serves to anchor the plant and provide water and minerals that are needed for making the food or the glucose. Next system we're going to look at is the shoot system. Okay, it's kind of fun because the plant systems rhyme, the roots and shoot system. And the key here is if the root system is anything below the soil, the shoot system is anything above the soil. The shoot system includes the leaves, the stem, and also the flowers and fruit of the plant. So if we could put, actually, let me see if I have a darker color here. If we could put like this is the ground, right? Anything below the soil, that's the root system. Anything above the soil, including stems, leaves, flowers, fruits, those kinds of things, all of those are parts of the shoot system. So those two systems, the roots and shoots, work to keep the plant alive, and they work together. Okay, really quickly, the next subtopic here for the handwritten notes, people. The shoot system is the general topic. This is the leaves, the stem, and also the flowers and fruits of the plant. And then I just kind of put here, which I don't think is in the printed off notes. So if you have those, I would go ahead and add this. But the shoot system is really anything above the ground. Okay, the main thing about vascular plants, as we've said before, is vascular plants have these tubes, or what we've also been calling veins, used to transport water and nutrients. Vascular plants have tubes, which are also called specialized tissue, to transport water, nutrients, and minerals. And these tubes together are called vascular bundles, okay? So in this case, this is what's called a cross section of a plant stem. If you were to cut this stem in half and then look at it directly, like this is the inside part of the stem that you wouldn't have been able to see had you not cut it. Each of these little, it looks like almost like pinkish, orangish seeds right here, each of those are vascular bundles, okay? And these vascular bundles are made up of two different types of tubes, the xylem tubes, or the xylem tissue, and the phloem tubes, or the phloem tissue, okay? Two funny words, but that really is how they're pronounced, xylem and phloem. These tubes or specialized tissue allow vascular plants to grow large. So we're going to talk in just a second about what each of these mean, what the phloem is for, what its job is, and what the xylem is for and its job. But it really does look like, especially in this picture right here, a bunch of straws almost, just kind of like bundled together and being held by either a hand or kind of squeezed together, which is really exactly how the plant's veins or tubes or specialized tissue work. Okay, so the two types of tubes, xylem and phloem. Okay, typically you have the phloem around the outside of the cross section or stem. Oh, you can't see that. Around the outside, okay? So in this case, we're seeing it here. I believe that yellow part, the little yellow bundles here. And then the xylem tends to be more towards the middle usually, okay? All right, so we're gonna talk about xylem first. Xylem tissue transports minerals and water in an upward direction. That's super important to remember, okay? Xylem never flows down, it only flows up. So if it's flowing up, if you think about it, the only thing that needs to be taken from the ground up is the water that the roots are gathering. These vascular plants do not have to live close to the water because water is stored in large vacuoles in the cells, okay? So if you look at this graphic over here on the right, this middle part is cambium tissue. I believe this is more like the fleshy or like the white kind of fluffy part of the stems and the leaves and things like that. But xylem is what you see on the right here, okay? And these upward arrows are showing you that the xylem transports things up from the ground. Now, the only thing that the plant will use that's coming from the ground is mostly water, maybe a little bit of minerals. But the job of the xylem is to get that water up through the stem and deliver it to the leaves and the chloroplasts in the leaves, okay, this is where it's going, so that it can be used for photosynthesis, okay? So xylem is the tissue that flows upward, and what's going to be flowing upward is the water. The water enters the xylem in this order, okay? It is absorbed from the soil through root hair cells, okay? What's interesting is, I'm going to pretend like these are different roots here for this plant. Clearly they're not, but we can pretend. Each of the roots, if you were to put them under a microscope, they have tiny little hairs sticking off of them, okay? And these hairs, their job is to suck up the water from the soil, okay? So it's absorbed through the soil, from the soil through the root hair cells. Then is transported through the xylem vessels, which come all the way up to here, right? Up the stem into the leaves. It's used for photosynthesis, and then whatever is left over, whatever is left during that waste product of photosynthesis, evaporates from the leaves during a process called transpiration. We've mentioned this before, but we talked about how if you have like a living plant and you put a plastic bag or something over the leaf and kind of cover it up and leave it there for a day or two, or even just a few hours, I think, you'll come back and you can find the water droplets forming on the inside of the plant. And that's from that transpiration process, okay? The water was absorbed through the root hair cells, transferred through the xylem tissue up to the leaves for photosynthesis. They had a little bit extra left over, and so they released that back into the air through transpiration. Okay, so a lot of people ask me, Miss Rosling, water doesn't normally flow upwards, and you're right. Normally, because of the effect of gravity, water would flow downwards, right? But because just in the same way that when you suck on a straw, right? When you suck on a straw, you're actually removing the air from the straw, and the liquid that is beneath the straw has to replace the air, right? There can't be nothing in the straw. There has to be either air or gas or water or drink or something. So when you perform that sucking action and you pull the air out of the straw, as you pull the air, it's simultaneously replaced by the water or whatever it is that you're drinking. The same process happens with the xylem. The xylem, from the moment it begins to grow, it starts that kind of sucking motion and pulls the water up the same way you would through a straw. Okay, so the handwritten notes, our next topic here is tube-like structures. There's two different types. So the first one I put up here is xylem, and I put a box around it. I'll do the same thing for phloem down here in just a minute. But for xylem, these transport water, nutrients, and minerals upward. Up, up, up. That's super important to remember. I'm going to give you a little rhyme to remember that in just a little bit. But transport water, nutrients, and minerals upward from the roots to the stem system. And because of this, vascular plants do not have to live close to water because the water is stored in the cell vacuoles. All right, so the second type of tissue is the phloem, okay? Phloem tissue, if the xylem carries the water and nutrients upward, okay, let's go find a different color here. The phloem tissue carries the food made through photosynthesis downward from the leaves back to the lower parts of the plant. The phloem tissue surrounds the xylem and is the main tissue found in the part or outer part of the stem. Okay, so xylem brings the water up to the leaves, right? Let me draw my leaves again. Yikes, my barely look like leaves. Okay, the water gets delivered by the xylem. Let's go back to the red here. The water gets delivered to the plants or to the leaves, and then the leaves perform photosynthesis. Okay, the food that is made as a result of photosynthesis then gets sent back down to the roots of the plant through a different tube, and this would be the phloem. Okay, so phloem is generally the main tissue that makes up the parts of the stem. In this diagram here, you can see it's kind of surrounding the middle, okay? And its job is to transport the food back down. Okay, here's another way to look at it. This is another picture of what we call a cross section. Okay, if you were to cut that flower or plant off at the, not the flower, sorry, the plant or the stem directly across, and then you were to take that little cross section and look at it so you could like kind of see the inside parts of the flower, this is close to what you would see, okay? The xylem is the blue tubes here in the middle, while the phloem is all of these green tubes here and here and here and all the way around the stem. Okay, the pith is, well, this says the cells store sugars and proteins here. That's not one of the tube structures. And then the cortex and the epidermis. Fun fact, epidermis is similar to what we call our skin. Our skin's like our epidermis, okay? So basically the epidermis is just the outer covering of the plant or the stem, okay? So, this is what the cross-section of the plant would look like, mainly made up of the xylem tissue that carries the water up and the phloem tissue that carries the food made through photosynthesis back down. Now, sometimes the glucose, which hint hint we know is a form of sugar, sometimes that glucose is transported by the phloem back down is called sap. Okay, I'm almost positive you've heard this word before. This is the combination of water and sugar that the plant uses for nutrients, and that is why sap is sticky. If you've ever been playing in your yard or maybe even doing yard work and you've kind of dealt with the bark on the trees and plants and things like that, if your hands ever come away with like a sticky feeling, that is the sap. And the reason why it's sticky is the same reason why honey is sticky or brown sugar is sticky or candy can be sticky sometimes because of the sugar in it. So that right there is proof that the plant is making glucose. Now, this is the wrap, okay? I made this up a few years ago because I needed to find some way for students to remember which tissue flows which direction. So here's the key. You got to be prepped for this. Here we go. Xylem has a Y, so it goes high. Phloem to the flow, okay, like floor, because you know floor is down below you, right? So phloem to the flow, so it goes low. Okay, know it sounds super cheesy, but I guarantee y'all all sitting there rapping to yourselves, hopefully. Okay, but trust me, if you remember this rhyme, it will help you. Xylem has a Y, so it goes high. Okay, it carries the water up from the ground high. Phloem to the flow, just like the floor that you stand on, so it goes low. Okay, that will help you, I promise, hopefully. All right, so for the handwritten notes, the second type of tissue here is the phloem. This brings food made in the leaves to lower parts of the plant. The phloem surrounds the xylem and is the main tissue in the stem. And then down here, I wrote the little rhyme/rap thing. The xylem has a Y, so it goes high, phloem to the flow, so it goes low. Even if you're doing the handwritten or the printed version of the notes, I do want you to write this somewhere because you do need to know that. Okay? And yes, this is an article just about some more facts about sap that we don't need to get into today. But once you finish those notes, make sure you put them in the notes section of your binder. Hopefully you're keeping all of your notes organized. And we'll see you on Monday. Have a good weekend.